President Obama's former chief strategist, David Axelrod, and former White House political director under George W. Bush, Matt Schlapp. I want to start with Matt Schlapp. What did you make of that calibration? He wouldn't give me a number between 1 and 10 there when I suggested 7 on Hillary Clinton on her hawkishness, but he was pretty tough on placing her. It seemed to me to his right when it came to his hawkish side when it came to starting wars.
Look, when you look at your interview and his answer to that question and what he's doing on the Patriot Act, it seems like Rand Paul sees this lane. And this lane is, and you look at the poll numbers you threw up on the screen earlier, you know, Rand Paul sees a lane that he can appeal to independents, he can appeal to young voters, he can basically appeal to voters who are war-weary. And I think your interview with him showed that.
What do you think, David? I think he's working the only game in town. In other words, he's making himself among 18 candidates for the Republican nomination, the only one who says, you know what, we've been too warlike. We've been going instinctively too warlike.
No, you're absolutely right. The name of the game when you have such a large field is market segmentation. How do you differentiate yourself from the others? And this, you know, obviously these views are consistent with the ones he's been articulating over a long period of time. And I think that the name of the game in Iowa and New Hampshire is how do you expand the base, your base of support? How do you bring new people into the election? And this is his path to doing that. The question is when the field, I think he can get somewhere down the field doing this. The question is when the field winnows down, are a majority of Republicans willing to accept that point of view? And I think that's a very iffy question.
Yeah, and right now he's running pretty much even with Secretary Clinton in Pennsylvania, which I think is a state that's deer hunter country. It likes guns. It likes to go out and shoot deer. It doesn't like stupid wars, anyway, because they're the ones that have to fight it. Anyway, on the issue of evolution, I know they hate talking about this on the Republican side, Matt. A plurality of Republicans do not believe that human beings evolved over time, but instead existed in their present form since the beginning of time. That's the belief of most Republicans, according to a Pew poll released in January 14, not a million years ago, January 14. Here's Senator Paul on that subject today. It doesn't offend your religious beliefs to accept the fact there's been human life for millions of years.
No, I think that you can see God in a lot of different forms, and I think that it's really harder to argue the contrary, that there was no God involved, sort of whether it's a big bang or some kind of beginning, that we came out of nothing. I think it's harder for the human mind to conceive of coming out of nothingness than it is.
Matt, what will Huckle Chuckle, Mike Huckabee, do with that information? I mean, Santorum is another one of these flat earthers when it comes to evolution. I don't know where it's not our religion, certainly not Roman Catholic religion, to believe anything but revolution, which is scientific fact. But for some reason, the Republican Party has candidates who want to keep selling the old-time religion of literal interpretation of the Bible, of Genesis, and that's where they are. Why is that a political issue with your party?
Well, because I think people keep asking them, and I think it's perfectly clear in America that we have a religious zone and people can have their religious views. Look, the world just lost Father Ted Hesburgh, the longtime president of Notre Dame, and he taught me as a student and the rest of us that religion and faith are compatible, that scientific fact comes from our understanding of religion and faith. And I think
that's what I was taught too.
The fact that, you know, God created us and created us as human beings is perfectly consistent with the idea that also human beings have improved.
Why does someone in your party have a problem with science?
Because a lot of people think the theory of evolution means that I evolved from a tadpole. And that's also wrong. So let's get the science right, and let's also get the science right in the womb, where a lot of Democrats fail to look at the science.
David, it seems to me that part of this is the absurd belief by people like Huckabee that there has been somebody around the world salting the earth with old phony bones. They honestly believe that those million-year-old bones like Lucy, 3.5 million years old, were put there by bad lefties from the west side of New York or something. I don't know where they get the idea, but they hate it when somebody says there's science involved in the history of humanity. And that's why I brought it up today, just to cause trouble, because those people should be outed, the people who think like that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, although those people will find a constituency in, for example, the Iowa caucuses, where there's a big social conservative over time. And again, in a general election, you know, you talk about the swing constituencies in this country, Rand Paul's position would be a comfort to them. But if you're going to be supportive of science, be supportive of science all the way. You can't be a tree hugger and deny that the planet's warming and that human beings have something to do with it. That's a hump that Senator Paul hasn't gotten over yet. So there are questions that will arise over time. He's doing a good job of passing this first test and answering these questions at the first level. But as you drill down, it's going to become more difficult for him.
Well, here's something we talked a lot about. Senator Paul agreed that big money in politics is in control of both parties. I pushed him to say he wouldn't quite go there, but I said, is it pushing both parties to the right on war policy? But here he is. There's big money driving the Republican Party to the hawkish side. These big godfathers of candidates who just come in there and say, I'll give you $200 million, but talk the line.
Big money drives both parties. Big money's big money's in control of parties. And I have one.
To the hawkish position.
Well, yeah, I mean, just big money in general for a variety of positions.
Let me ask you about that, Matt. Again, it's a tricky question, but we have well-known billionaires out there, you know, like Sheldon Adelson and this guy Brayman behind Rubio, who openly have hard right of hawkish positions on the Middle East, very hard right. And they have these candidates. It's almost like they're little devotees. It's getting pretty blunt. Money is pushing us to the right, I think. What do you think?
Well, my criticism of my party and many of its candidates is we're not doing a very good job of kind of being respectful in this conversation with the big donors. It's done in such a kind of gaudy and public way. But we also have our big donors on the right who are more libertarian. So I'm not sure it's all coming from the one side.
Why are they all hawks? But they're all hawks.
Well, I don't think that's right. I think there's plenty of libertarian donors.
Name me a dove with billions of dollars in spending it right now.
Peter Thiel, the Koch brothers. There are plenty of people that have a different view on. But let me just finish one thing.
The Koch brothers are doves. Okay, I didn't hear that before.
My party is a party that is trying to find its way back on these sets of issues. Ronald Reagan said peace through strength, and they're looking at what they got in the latter years of the Bush administration, and they're rethinking. So I think your interview with Rand Paul really shows that this is a conversation the Republican Party is currently having.
Do you think Ronald Reagan would have taken us into Iraq?
Are you asking me that?
Yes, Matt.
Yeah, I don't. I actually don't.
Thank you. We'll agree on that. You know, you learned something, Notre Dame. I think that is so proving of that point. Let me go to my friend David. What do you make? These are all sad cases, and anybody who gets a kick out of this has got a problem. I'm just saddened by this story of Denny Hastert. I don't know all the facts, but what we're hearing now looks like a case of he did something when he was a coach, and he tried to cover it up. That's what it looks like, and there may have been blackmail involved. We don't know, but the details of this charge against him is pretty graphic.
No, this is a terribly, terribly sad story. It's sad for everyone involved, and it's shocking to those of us who knew him. You know, I ran Chris the first race against him, the first Democratic race against him when he ran for Congress as a state senator, and it was a hard-fought race on issues. There was never any doubt about his character or about any of this stuff. So I think for everyone who knows him, this came out of the blue. And let me add that for someone from Illinois, the thought of a scandal where the politician was actually paying out the cash instead of receiving it, that's a whole new thing out here.
You've got a hell of a queue of governors that all went into the big house. Anyway, thank you very much for your honesty, as always, David Axelrod. Matt, it's great having you on this show. I almost went to Notre Dame. I got a better offer from Holy Cross.
Oh, come now. Win one for the Gipper.
Okay, anyway, thank you. Well, we had our